Saskatchewan's lakes, rivers, and wetlands are part of life in the province. They support our communities, recreation, tourism, agriculture, and the infrastructure we rely on. But those waters face a growing threat from aquatic invasive species. In Saskatchewan, species of concern can include zebra and quagga mussels, spiny water flea, goldfish, koi, Prussian carp, and flowering rush. These species can damage ecosystems, limit recreation, affect tourism and property values, and they can lead to major costs for infrastructure at water intakes, irrigation systems, and hydropower facilities. Climate change can increase that risk. Warmer water, longer ice-free seasons, flooding, and changing water conditions can make it easier for invasive species to survive and spread.
Here in Saskatchewan, we do have, very cold temperatures, but as we see temperatures start to increase, species that were maybe not a risk to us in the past because of their ability to survive in only warmer climates, we're now at risk of, the impacts of all of these species that weren't a risk to us before. So it just puts more of our waters at risk. Extreme climate events like flooding can have huge impacts, especially for aquatic invasive species, because it facilitates the movement of water. And with that, you see, potentially new environments being invaded. You see, very rapid expansion of potentially established species already, and you're also providing opportunities for aquatic invasive species to potentially breach man-made and natural barriers. Additionally, connecting watersheds that might not have had connectivity before.
That is why early detection is so important. Once an invasive species becomes established, it can be extremely difficult to control.
So we actively monitor for some of the higher, we would say the higher risk aquatic invasive species like invasive mussels and spiny water flea. We do monitor for those every year, and currently have not detected those in the province, but we do have a number of other species that we're either actively monitoring or controlling.
Monitoring focuses on high-risk areas including boat launches, marinas, and frequently used shorelines. Fine mesh nets are pulled through the water to collect samples, and those samples are preserved and sent to a lab where specialists test for signs of the invasive species.
So in some cases, we are potentially able to respond and try to control spread. Obviously, we want to reduce the area impacted by aquatic invasive species, so containment is a big important part of that. So we need to know they're there in order to contain them and prevent further expansion to within a watershed or even outside of a watershed. So yeah, trying to find them early is key so that we can actually potentially do something to minimize the impacts.
And while monitoring work is an important part of water stewardship, it alone cannot stop the spread. Everyone who uses the water has a role to play. Whether you're boating, fishing, paddling, or spending time at the lake, prevention starts with 3 simple steps. Clean, drain, dry. Clean your boat, trailer, all equipment. Be sure to remove mud, plants, and anything else you find before leaving the water. Drain standing water from your boat, live wells, bilge, ballast tanks, and gear. And last, dry your equipment completely between trips whenever possible.
Yeah, so I think a big part of that is just becoming aware of aquatic invasive species. So, as I said, we haven't currently detected, the high-risk species like zebra mussels or quagga mussels, but that doesn't mean that we're not at risk. And so understanding the impacts of those species, understanding how they're moved, and how oftentimes humans accidentally facilitate the movement of those species and create new introductions of really high-risk species with really, drastic impacts is really important. And so, taking responsibility for your watercraft and making sure you're cleaning, draining, and drying all of your watercraft equipment every time you use it. Be a responsible pet owner. We're not letting our aquarium pets out into the environment.
Aquatic invasive species can spread unintentionally, but simple, consistent actions can make a real difference. By staying informed, supporting monitoring efforts, and practicing clean, drain, and dry every time, we can help protect Saskatchewan's waters. Together, we can reduce the risk of aquatic invasive species and support healthier, more resilient watersheds for future generations.